a night with Bobby Seale. Currently, the nation and the world are going through uncertain political times as various legislative acts are being discussed and passed. Decisions are being made today that will ultimately affect us tomorrow and impact our future. These decisions are being made by mostly one generation, the baby boomers. With more than 80 million strong, baby boomers continue to grow and impact our nation. These Americans have perhaps been one of the most outspoken generations of our time. During their young adulthood, they boldly stood forth to make their voices heard, to shape their future and world. They led and marched for civil rights, equality, and justice for people of all walks of life. These Americans were empowered through their ability to organize, move in great numbers on issues they didn't deem as right, and put pressure on the nation leaders to make changes. These activisms were real. Their activism was their real weapon of their generation. This generation understood that it was up to them to create the world they wanted to live in. Many groups were formed during this tremendous time of the 1960s. These groups had different messages and views they wanted the country to embrace. One of the most recognized groups was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, founded in October 1966 in Oakland, California by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton. The Black Panther Party achieved national and international notoriety through their involvement in the Black Party movement and U.S. politics of the 1960s and 70s. As students, we can't be passive. During the 1960s, college students were politically active and made their voices heard regarding social issues. Today, we face similar challenges of disparities in education, healthcare, and economic empowerment. Thus, the FSU Student Government Association is proud to bring you this program to enlighten the spirit within us to change the world. For we cannot wait until a few days or weeks before the election to understand and affirm the critical importance of ensuring that the highest possible turnout of young Americans across the U.S., we must act now.
Good evening. I am April Love, your SGA Secretary, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Mr. Bobby Seale. As demonstrated in the video, Bobby Seale is a living legend from an era that helped shape and progress for African Americans in this country. While others stood by, Bobby Seale, on an almost daily basis, put his life on the line protecting African Americans from police brutality and serving thousands through medical clinics and providing free food to school children. Seale was born to a carpenter in Dallas, Texas on October 22, 1936. During the Second World War, the Seale family moved to Oakland, California. In 1962, Seale entered Merritt College in Oakland, California. While a student, he heard Malcolm X speak at a meeting. While many others did what many of us today continue to do, listen to a speech, briefly get motivated, yet do nothing, Seale, however, was so influenced by what he heard, he joined the Afro-American Association and became active in the civil rights movement. In 1966, Seale joined with Huey Newton to form the Black Panther Party with two core purposes: to protect local communities from police brutality and racism, and to serve an economically challenged African American community. Seale and Newton didn't start the Black Panther Party for the fame, nor did they realize the major historical implications the movement would have today. They were simply two young people that saw inequality and wanted to fight against it. During their time in our nation's history, the Black Panther Party overcame the oppressive forces of discrimination to register thousands to vote against the establishment, complete with law books in their hands and legal guns handy for self-defense against racist and fascist police. Seale is considered by many historians as one of the most important Black political activists of the 1960s and the 1970s. Mr. Seale illuminates the true 60s birth and youthful intelligentsia of the Black Panther Party. Tonight, he will unfold for us the pragmatic, philosophical range of the 60s protest movement and programmatic grassroots community organizing that occurred during the time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bobby Seale.
All right.
Thank you very much for inviting me here in Fayetteville. I was in another Fayetteville, I think in Virginia one time. And after we left the engagement, some racists wanted a convenience store at a service station. So you're wild enough to come in here and steal all of my stuff. I says, what? I said, man, cash our stuff, man. Come that racist crap. I guess the same thing happened to me when I was in the United States Air Force as a young man. I ran into racism inside there. I got in the Air Force, boy, I was going to make a career out of this thing. In tech school, I was an honor student, et cetera, and so on. You know, the commanding officer of the base gave me this big letter, et cetera, and so on. Got up to Rapid City, South Dakota, Ellsworth Air Force Base. And I took all my skill level tests. The next thing I know, you know, they had me a corporal, they was ready to make me a sergeant. And some guy came in, he wanted his buddy to be the next promoted sergeant in that particular structural repair shop that I was working in. And he called me a little black nigger. I think his voice, passing me early in the morning as we came to the job, and I'm looking at a piece of aircraft cowling on the table. And I said, what? And I ran and grabbed a piece of metal extrusion, thick, heavy type 75 ST metal extrusion, and ran up and started beating this guy. You know, and Sergeant Parrott was trying to put me up and give me the new promotion. Come on, man. I said, this dude called me a black nigga. I went, what the? See, in my mind, that meant they wanted to kill me. You have to understand the historical terrorism, lynchings and murder and stuff, and then some white person gets mad and start calling you a nigger this and nigger that, and, you know. The next thing I know, I'm busted, I'm in the stockade. But this guy, when I ran up to him, I found out later, he had all these padded parkas and flight pants and stuff on. And when I ran up to him, I do remember that he just sort of bent over. And I'm beating him, and I thought I'm getting something. I wasn't getting anything. This guy was all padded down. So he tricked me. And then to a fight with a woman, his buddy got promotion. My activism was evolved in an inadvertent kind of way. Probably Ronald Reagan, the governor of California at the time in 1967, when I led an armed delegation to the California State Legislature. That's that poster you see hanging there. When I led that delegation there to lead Executive Mandate number 1 from the Black Panther Party, we were only about 6 months old at this time. A very ragtag organization. We had less than 50 members. When I led that delegation, Ronald Reagan began to immediately in public on the news classify me as some kind of hoodlum. And I've always resented that. You know, I said, what kind of company is a hoodlum? And see, the counterintelligence program of the FBI who worked their butts off and murdered and killed and did everything they could in violating our Constitution, democratic civil human rights, the rights to organize our people. Everything they did, they never told you about me. So I have to tell people about what I was, and who I was, etc. I was raised a carpenter and a builder. I'm talking about from age 6. My father built our first home in Port Arthur, Texas. You know, and I was 6 years old when he was building that house and turned 7 when he finished. And I helped paint the front of it. You know, I'm talking about something that was all part of my family anyway. My grandpa built the town of Weirgate, Texas, some 700 homes there under contract with the banking family known as the Seale family. It's a white family who owned the banking business in the town and county of Jasper, Texas, East Texas, not far from the Louisiana border. So my great-grandma and my great-grandpa, Peter Seale, well, Peter and my grandma went to work for that family at Emancipation Proclamation, Juneteenth Emancipation Proclamation. That's 2 years after the actual Emancipation Proclamation. If people don't know that in Texas, people didn't get the information for almost 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, and that's what they called it. That's, and having went to work there 2 years after that, Peter and my great-grandma married. And of course, they had a son. And being close to the banking family had a lot to do with building and construction contracts. That is, they put up money for it. And then my grandpa evolved to be one of the major carpenters. And in effect, he, as a grown man, 30-something years old, got the contract to build the town of Weirgate, Texas. So you see what my background is on that. So when I was 18, I was already an architect, not only a trained carpenter. Furniture replenishing with my father's businesses and stuff. That's where I was at. The time I go to the United States Air Force, you know, honestly, what have you, et cetera, and all this kind of stuff to repair high-performance aircraft. The counterintelligence program, Ronald Reagan and other racists and politicians and governments are not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you, you know, that I'm a jazz drummer. They're not going to tell you that I'm a stand-up comedian. They're going to tell you that I also did a lot of stage acting and plays in Black Arts West Theater in San Francisco. I'm not going to tell you any of that. They tell you that Bobby Seale is the movement of thug, stereotype, who we are, who the Black Panther Party was, etc. You know, so my point is that I'm defending that history. And of course, with this lecture here, you're going to discover that Bobby Seale and his other people, professionals, and others in filmmaking, said we're going to make a major feature film. And that major feature film is my life story. But the life story is the rise and the decline of the Black Panther Party in the United States of America as a means to try to help the youth understand the fascism that went down in the 1960s against my organization, the Black Panther Party. What really happened there? Why did all those shootouts happen? How did we get stereotyped? How did the government, the FBI particularly, and the counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO is the key word we use a lot. Academics and other people who understand this history. The FBI said COINTELPRO. COINTEL means counterintelligence program. And that's what happened with us. That's what happened with us. But in that, why did they attack us so bad? I mean, you're going to learn and understand that the Free Breakfast for Children program that I created in the Black Panther Party, we evolved that program around September 1968 at St. Augustine's Church, one block from a grammar school. Free breakfast for children. It was one of our issues. In other words, we had a 10-point platform program on the one hand, but out of the 10-point platform program, over a period of time, 1 or 2 years, we developed 22 different community programs. One of them was the pre-breakfast for children program, another was the pre-6-7 testing program, another was the pre-preventative medical health care clinics, another one was the community cooperative housing. Community cooperative housing never got any farther than all my architectural designs and flat lot layout concept for that. But we created the pre-busing and prisoners program, the pre-legal aid service. I mean, we went on and on and on and on. Other party members got very creative with that. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, boom, they created the first pre-ambulance program, complete with a 501c3 nonprofit entity status, and created a whole committee in the community for the community health clinic, etc. I mean, these are the kind of things that Black Panther Party, young black folks and young white folks who helped us put together in this country in terms of the program. In other words, yes, we loved all the marches. Yes, we loved all the rallies. But there was another level of demonstration. And how we demonstrated, we added something to that protest movement. We weren't against the protests and other things and the rallies. We just added something. And we added the methodology of setting up real programs that spoke to the real issues of the people in the community. We further moved with those programs, which was my strategy, which was my programmatic outline to do, to unite the electorate, the African American black community vote in the community. How do we unite? And that was what the objective was. This Black Panther Party started with us going out to patrol and observe police. People's minds and imagination, you listen to the stereotype of the politicians, their hoops, their thugs, boom, 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 boom. You misunderstand what we did and how we did it as college students. You have to remember we were students. You know, I knew my history. From 1962 right on up to 1966, I knew my African American people's history of struggle, backwards, forward, sideways, and catapult. I mean, before the Black Panther Party even started, I helped put up the first youth jobs program for the poor and low-income African-American community in North Richmond, California, not far from Oakland, California. And later, I ran the youth jobs programs at Oakland, California, working for the city government and the Department of Human Resources, city government in Oakland. When we created the Black Panther Party, I was still working with the city government. So you have to, if you get understanding what was happening here. Now, I quit my engineering job at Kaiser Aerospace and Electronics. In other words, the power structure is not going to tell you that I worked in the Gemini missile program. Power structure is not going to tell you that Bobby Seale was one of the top non-destructive testers, electromagnetic black light non-destructive testing for all engine planes with the Gemini missile program where they would put the satellites up there. They're not going to tell you that. What they tell you is that Bobby Seale was a hoodlum, a thug, because we had some guns to patrol some police. Then how did we do that? I mean, how did we patrol police first for 6 months? Got some close calls. And in 1 year, it took 1 year before a shootout actually happened. They had to make a law in 6 months after we patrolled the police to stop us from carrying loaded weapons. And were our weapons legal? Yes, they were. And why do we do it? Why do we do that in the first place? We'd written a 10-point platform of program. Number 1, we wanted power to turn around with destiny. Number 2, pulling problems by people. Number 3, decent housing for children and men. Number 4, decent education, talking about history. Number 5, we wanted to end the robbery and exploitation of African American communities and so on. Free preventative medical health care clinics. We wanted all black men and women to be exempt from any military service because this country is not recognized in our Constitution, democratic civil human rights. In 1966, this is what we wrote. And you have to remember and understand, this was tumultuous time. This was a protest movement time. This was a time when the whole country was protesting a war in Vietnam. Simultaneously, Dr. Martin Luther King and many other civil rights organizations were already there, existing, protesting on a nationwide scale. And we, the Black Panther Party, popped up right in the middle of all of this and decided that since they're brutalizing, shooting, and killing, and murdering peaceful protesters. Huey P. Newton, my friend, was in law school at this time. Almost 2 years in law school at this time. And his point was, these people, any governor or any sheriff who goes and beats up peaceful protesters, and when they shoot and kill and murder peaceful protesters, he would say they're violating the law of the land because the people have a right by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America to peacefully assemble and peacefully redress their grievances. Therefore, if they're going to brutalize us and also brutalize the free speech right protesters, the peaceful protesters, then therefore we have a right to defend ourselves. So we wrote point number 7, we wanted immediate end to police brutality, murder of black people in our black community. We believe that all black people should have a right to defend themselves, and those of us who have a shotgun in their home should take that position of the right to self-defense. But we went further to say we wanted all black men and women who've been tried by all white juries. Too many, I'm talking about 99% of a lot of trials that was going on up to that period was all white juries. And we wrote in our 10-point platform program, we want black people from the average reasoning person in the black community to be on some of these juries, you know what I mean, to represent. So this becomes the peers. This is what the jury is supposed to be about. You have a right for your peers in the community to judge the case, the level against you, and so on. So this was a general program, but it was on time. Now remember, they call us Susan and call us Stubbs. When you and I finished writing that 10-point platform program, I mean, we started off at my house with some notes and boom, 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 and then we had to go to court because we got in a fight with the police because I recited a poem called Uncle Sandy called me for the Lucifer. You know, I wasn't going to go over there and serve this goddamn war anymore because the war is not, because this country is not recognized by constitutional rights and so on. And we got before the judge, you know, and I argued with the judge, you know, with a no contest plea. And I said, no, Your Honor, it's not right. All I did was recite a poem and this undercover cops attacked me, etc., blah, 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 blah. Well, Mr. I said, sir, I work for the Department of Human Resources. I'm responsible for 100 youth in my community, 75 males and 25 females, to get jobs, to get education, and not commit crime. I said, so it's underpaying what the judge gave me in probation for that. We didn't have to go to jail. And that was the night when we finished that 10-point platform program. And it's the tail end of that 10-point platform program, the tail end of that 10-point platform program. If you ever take time to read my book, see the time that I got stacked up here on the table for you. I'm saying, right in there you'll see it. What do we put at the tail end of that 10-point platform program? Besides saying we wanted land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace, and the United Nations Supervised Purposes to determine the will and destiny of our black community, we had 2 other paragraphs there, and this is how it went. Remember, power structure called us hoops and tugs. It went like this. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for any one people to dissolve the political bondage which are connecting them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth to set an equal station in which the laws of nature, nature's God and title, a teaching respect to the opinions of humankind, dictate this, declare the causes which impel them to dissolve that political bondage. And if you want to get down like some old righteous preacher preaching in the church, when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursues an environment. I say environment, a design to reduce a people under absolute despotism. Then it is the right, I say it's the right of the people to alter and change that government and provide new laws for the people security and happiness. Now, it's called integrating the intellectual with the emotion. It's a methodology I didn't even know I had. I was just a comedian and stand-up comedian and stage actor. But later on somebody said, yeah, but very little good, it's okay. My point is, I'm creating an organization. I've quit my engineering job after 3.5 years. I want to work in the grassroots community. I want to put up programs. I want to end institutionalized racism in America. And one of the things we understood about institutionalized racism, Huey being in law school and us always going over the law, looking at what happened with Sister Rosa Parks in the mid-50s, and she said, She had to move to the back of the bus and then she was arrested and charged, blah, 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 blah. The crux of institutionalized racism is manifested in the laws. Some state legislators, white racist legislators, made a law, and 1,001 other different kinds of laws, but made a law that said she had to ride in the back of the bus. And that even if you're on the back of the bus as a white person, need a seat, you gotta get up and get that white person that seat. And that's the surface law. I'm saying this is the crux of it, and that's what you and I understood. That's what I understood. I've researched all my history. I knew my history back and forth beside as a Catholic. When I talk about us fighting in wars, you know, oh, you're a coward. I told her, you got to be out of your mind. You need to digest Dr. Herbert Adler's documentation of all the wars that African American people have fought in this country, beginning with the original Revolutionary War in this country. The German Christian soldiers that the king was sent over here to ride out the colonialism and work trying to start this country and go around. Who kicked the butts of the German Christian soldiers when they landed in Rhode Island? The blacks who had been promised freedom from slavery, that they trained at Lafayette, French advisor George Washington, had suggested to the New England patriots that you have to train some of these blacks here to help you. You ragtag and send the German Russian soldiers and ships over here, and they're going to kick you butts unless you really hit. Who beat up those German Russian soldiers? Those black slaves who had been trained and promised their freedom. Not just Christmas addicts. I'm talking about people who need to get into the Delta where we came from. And then the Civil War, after the Emancipation Proclamation was written, and where it says that this rebel course free, you know the very next line that's in the Emancipation Proclamation? It says, everybody black man was taken into the North Union Army. The North was losing the war. And the white folks were not letting themselves be conscripted into enslavement because that's what it looked like it turned out to be. And they enlisted 168,000 black people, black men, directly in the Civil Wars. 38,000 of them died. W.E.B. Wars, Black Reconstruction. Read it, check it out. Dr. Herbert Adler, all black Americans fighting involved. I'm saying we, African American people, from slavery, in slavery, after slavery, have been at the forefront on a consistent basis, fighting, standing up for our Constitution, democratic civil rights. The Constitution, democratic civil rights, which are afforded to people beyond us as a people. This is what we've done. So mine in the 1960s was about electoral community unity in the black community. And broader coalition politics with all progressive people and progressive organizations who were about standing up for these constitutional democratic civil rights, protesting the existing government, protesting existing organizations, protesting the existing business entities, etc. In 1962, I've been a year into researching my African American history. Dr. Martin Luther King, brother Dr. Martin Luther King, came to speak at the Oakland Auditorium in Oakland, California. I was just a young student. No, I was still in engineering design. Maybe I had not quit the job yet. I had not quit my night job on the Gemini Missile program. But I ran down to hear Dr. King speak. And Dr. King was speaking there. 7,000 people in this auditorium. I'm one of them, one young student. And at one point, Dr. King got to talking about various businesses that refused to hire people of color. And we're going to boycott such and such a company, and so and so and so, because they have refused to hire people of color, etc., and so on. And then he got on the bread companies from the San Francisco Oakland Bay Area where I was from. And we're going to boycott Landorf Bread Company, and we're going to boycott Kilpatrick's Bread Company, and we also want to boycott Wonder Bread Company. We want to boycott them so consistently and so profoundly, we want to make Wonder Bread wonder where the money is. That audience, me with them, hit the floor, applauding. I mean, talking about Dr. Martin Luther King. A lot of people say, well, they were over here, and the black. Who put that whole thing out there? We didn't support Dr. Martin Luther King. The counterintelligence program, the racist politicians and others. We supported everybody's constitutional democratic civil rights, and especially the right to peaceful protest. And people mix the thing up. Well, if you respect the right to peaceful protest, what we got guns to defend our right for peaceful protest. What are you talking about? That's what I'm saying. You're killing and murdering, brutalizing and shooting and killing not only the black folks, but young white radicals who have peaceful protests. That's what you're doing. So we're a new organization. We say we have a right to self-defense. Now, if you come down here with your racist self-attacking us, you start shooting us, we're going to shoot back, we're going to defend ourselves. And where do we get this from? Robert Williams, 1959, Monroe, North Carolina. Negroes with guns. A Marine, an ex-Marine out of the United States Army, is now head of the NAACP in Monroe, North Carolina. So he has a peaceful protest downtown about some of these places called Woolworth and other stores that won't hire black folks. And so the Ku Klux Klan decide they don't like this. And at nighttime, they start coming in, the black community, riding in 20 cars, shooting up the whole community. And Robert Williams says, no. Nobody will do anything. The local sheriff ain't doing nothing about it, etc. So Robert said, oh, we have to defend ourselves. So all you men got shotguns, etc. Get a few more guns in here, etc. This man is an ex-Marine, fought in the United States Army in World War II. Give me a break. And then the next thing you know, they're going to run him out of the country. Then there was a deacon for defense. Later organized in the South about defending the right peaceful protest. And along come the Black Left Party. And there we were. At one point in that first 6 months, we were out to control the police. Legally. We were so legal they had to make a law 6 months later to stop us from controlling the police. That's how legal we were. Our guns were legal. Police come up to me and Huey, we have a line of practice standing here, everybody's disciplined, you know, so you don't even point a weapon at a person, you hold a rifle down like this here. My 45, when I pull it out, I hold it up. Why? Because we need the law. You cannot point a loaded weapon at a person under California law. Under California law, pointing a loaded weapon at a person constitutes assault with a deadly weapon. And if you did point one, be sure that you're able to argue in court that this person is getting ready to attack me, etc., in some rowdy fashion or some confusion. But we knew that we knew the law. We knew all the gun laws. Every last one. He was 2 years in law school, so all this was well researched. We did not go out there patrolling police like some macho stuff. You're on bad. Please. That was not what it was about. That very first well-organized patrol we had in the near the second week of January, we started the Black Panther Party October 1966. And we put together 14 party members. We had a new Black Panther Party office on the main street there, 2 blocks from my actual home and so on. But in the black community in Oakland, we went down there and we had 2 carloads and we got out of the cars and we walked down the street. Police had been pat-sitting some guys, so we got in his door, his passenger side door, while his arrestee stood at the back, so probably some chicken or something. And the police had his door open with writing something on his radio, blah, blah, blah. He didn't even see us walk up. And there's 30 or 40 people gathered around. Some old chip sister. Y'all show cheap, y'all show all that black and blue, because we had these blue shirts on, these black berets, you know, everybody. There's one sister, she says, I can't get a leather jacket. She says, get a black bush jacket. So I said, that's fine. She had this great afro, she had a beret sitting on it, she had these long earrings, and Richard Iocki got that in spring to give her a big 44 Magnum. Because we trained these brothers how to shoot weapons too. Me, Big Man Albert Howard, and Richard Iocki were the only ones who had former military service. Not even Huey. We had to train Huey about guns. It's safety, how to break down an M1 car, being me and Richard and Big Man Elder Howard was in Black Hawk Park. I'm just saying, boom. But we walked down the room. And so some old brother came out the door. Who came out from the convenience store doors on the sidewalk. What you got out there? It's dark, it's nighttime. What you got? Sticks in their hands out there. Some brother, tall brother said, there ain't no damn stick in the gun. And the old man said, guns, I'm getting out of here. And he says, no, he says, everyone stay here. We know the law, we have a right to stand and observe these policemen. And he was pointing back at the police, and I'm watching the policemen. 14 party was there. And the policeman got out of his car as he turns around. Police says, you have no right to observe me. And he says, no, such a California State Supreme Court rule states that every citizen has the right to stand and observe a police officer carrying out his duty as long as he stands a reasonable distance away. Reasonable distance, that particular rule constitutes 8 to 10 feet. I'm standing approximately 20 feet from you, and we observe you when you like it or not. Just like that, and we'll observe you whether you like it or not. And that old gypsy sister, she said, well, go head on. Just tell him that here. Conscious, is that gun loaded? He said, if I know it's loaded, it's good enough. Well, I have a right, he said, you have no right whatsoever, step back. And he said, he said, you cited something in the United States Supreme Court versus so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. That was my private property. You cannot remove my private property from it without due process of law. Step back. You cannot touch my weapon. Well, is the gun loaded? He says, if I know it's loaded, that's good enough. He jacked around up in the chamber. Why did he jack around up in the chamber? Because the law stated that while riding in a car, you cannot have a live round in the chamber of a rifle or a shotgun. Did not apply to a handgun that I carry. You could have a live round in the chamber. But when that cop insisted, he would say, if I know it's loaded, that's good enough. And then 3 or 4 more brothers with long guns, the crowd on the sidewalk said, oh, shit. And the rest of me out the street at the back of the car, he said, hey, man, and the cop really looked around and saw what's happening. He had a disciplined group of 14 brothers and 1 sister. And he got his arrested. And I looked him in his face. He wasn't scared. He was pissed off because he was outnumbered. But he wasn't outnumbered with a lot of loud talking. You see, it was a very disciplined thing. When we went out there, he would say, only one person talk. Because our position is that if you actually are properly placed under arrest, we will take the arrest. We're not scared of the court order. One person talk. He says, because once we get into court, give you arrest, he said, I would have 14 people testify to the exact same thing. Then they have a whole lot of people all the time. You can't win a case like that. So that's what we were, you know. The next thing I know, the police got his arrest, he put him in the car, and I said, get ready to watch the car. He stopped, and he stood there looking at one of these passengers. It was the sister with these pretty earrings. He was just shocked, I guess, as he said that one of these was a woman, you know, with this big 44 Magnum on her side. Gets in his car, he drives off. Some kids around the corner come running around with some more kids, bringing them around. See, ooh, and the kids start calling us these black police sisters now. I said, look, everybody, people here. My name is Bobby Seale. I'm chairman of the Black Lives Party. This is European Union's Administrative Convention of our Black Lives Party. We have a political education class on Wednesday night at 7 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m., 624 Grove Street, blah, 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 blah. We went home and I fed everybody. Not only was I the chairman, not only was I the top organizer, not only was I the top spokesman, I was the top cook in my organization, the Black Lives Party. Now, we weren't doing that to show. Our objective was to capture the imagination of the people. My objective, as I articulated to you and everybody, we're going to get programs, we're going to put the people in these programs, and we're going to unify these people and unify their votes. And as we unify the community, we want to take over the seats of the city council because they make laws. Remember, the laws are the crux of institutionalized racism in America. That electoral empowerment is very, very, very key. Right on up to this day, what's happening, and all this crap, the presidential election and so on, oh my God. You know what I mean? And Romney with his crazy self, oh my God. It burns me. Anyway, President Obama is symbolic of the progressive evolvement of an electorate, black, white, blue, red, green, yellow, polka dot, unified in opposition to racist exploitation and to people who are in opposition to constitutional, democratic, civil rights, any kind of legislative people empowerment rights. This is what this avaricious corporate money rich, that billionaire club that the Koch brothers run. I don't know how much information you get here. I'm hoping you do, and I'm sure some of the professors and others know that this billionaire club is not all billionaires. But you know, Oprah Winfrey is in another billionaire club, you know what I mean? Bill Gates is in another billionaire club. You see what I'm getting at? So Bill Gates owns MSNBC. Did you get MSNBC down here? They're the opposite of the racist Fox News framework. So it's important to understand what's going on here, this electoral empowerment. Electoral empowerment is the most profound necessity. You know, me, I'm not a socialist. And as I said, following the death of Martin Luther King, a few months after following the death of Martin Luther King, in an argument with some of my old socialist contemporaries, well, I'm not a socialist. What do you mean I'm not a socialist? I don't give a damn if the Black Panther Party has printed some stuff about socialism. I am not a socialist, and I'm going to see to it that I slow down any state-controlled commanding socialism sense. And I know some of these socialists here are democratic, you know, like the Socialist Workers' Party, blah, blah, blah. But the Black Panther Party, our ideology hinges on constitutional democratic, civil human rights, constitutional democratic community control of economic frameworks of retail and produce services and goods, constitutional democratic community input into the political institutions that affect our lives. So I'm a constitutionalist and a community controlist. That's not right to workers. I say every worker lives in the community. Definitively, I'm right. I told them. There's no argument here. But that's what I'm saying. You know, so the Tea Party, I was down in Orlando, Florida, speaking back here a couple of years ago, and they put on the internet, we're going to get up and we're going to protest Bobby Seale coming into our Covington community in Orlando, Florida, down here talking his socialism, boom, 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 boom. And I denounced the Politburo, state control, command, economy, socialism. It's only the extreme antithesis to avaricious corporate monopoly capitalism. Just because I say I'm not a socialist doesn't mean I agree with the avaricious corporate monopoly capitalism. I don't agree with it. Capitalism ain't going nowhere. The problem with capitalism is its avaricious, underhanded, vicious structure of exploitation of the people. That's the problem with capitalism. We've got to get rid of that avaricious corporate monopoly capitalist exploitation. That's the first thing. And we have to use a democratic structure to do it. It is called educating the people and raising the consciousness of the people. And that's what if you don't do it, last night I spoke to young black Democrats in Oakland, California, just before I caught a plane and fly out here. And this is what I'm telling these young brothers and sisters. And then many of them don't know my history. You know, but when I get through telling them, then hopefully it inspires them to understand. When we started in 1966, when SNCC started in 1963-62, when the civil rights was going on in the mid-60s, there were less than 50 duly elected African American people to political office throughout the whole of the United States of America. Listen to me, brothers and sisters. Only 50 black people of color put together, Asian, whoever, was duly elected to any political office. All political offices. And you have to ask your question, how many political offices are there in the United States of America that one can run for and be elected to? And I started looking at the thing. I said, whoa, wait a minute. We got 50 states. Oh, we got state governors and state legislators. I said, wait a minute. Each state have counties. We got a county supervisor. Do we elect the sheriff, or do we elect the president every? I said, wait a minute. And I said, whoa, there's some part-time mayor groups in small towns. Part-time mayor, part-time city council, some quarter-time, some half-time, some three-quarter time. Well, when you take all the political seats, one can be elected. It's over 500,000 political seats one can be elected to in the United States of America. Whoa, look at that. How many people have come? How many women at the time? Very little. So it was important. The progressive movement was to get as many people of color, hopefully who are progressive, elected to political office. That was what was my objective. That's why I created the Black Panther Party. So patrolling the police was just to capture the imagination of the people, and in effect, I organized programs all across the country. I organized when Huey sit in jail. My friend Huey was in jail. I'm out here organizing. And it was the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King that made my organization spread across the country like wildfire. Prior to Dr. Martin Luther King being killed. Now listen to something. The power structure wanted to stop something by killing Dr. Martin Luther King. 6 weeks before Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered, guess who called me on the phone? Dr. Reverend Ralph Abernathy of Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which is Dr. Martin Luther King's organization. I said, Dr. Abernathy, yes, sir. I says, how are you doing? He said, Mr. Seale, yes. He says, Dr. King has asked me to call you. I said, okay, yes, sir. He says, and he wants to know, would the Black Panther Party be willing to participate with 100 to 150 different other organizational groups in various roundtable discussions, meetings, and sessions. One aspect, we want to be able to work together on a consistent basis with committees and groups to try to outline and hammer out a practical economic rights goal objective. Oh, I said, yes, sir. I said, as chairman of the party, I declared that we would definitely do that. Even if my sister committee votes against me, I'll lead them and I'll come work with you. My point is, I agree. And then he says, well, there's going to be a poor people's march. And I said, yes, we'll help you. We'll work with you hard. You have to understand something about me and working and creating and involving the Black Panther Party. Yes, we were African American brothers and sisters, but we were not what you call racist. We didn't isolate ourselves. We didn't run around calling all white folks devils. That wasn't what we were about. In other words, the brothers come up and the white man's the devil. I said, man, you want to join my organization, brother? Yeah, I said, well, don't come here with that. It's totally unscientific. In other words, you have to know my history. I took every anthropology course there was at American College. You know what I mean? I got A's and that stuff. You know what I mean? I did papers on some agricultural sites in West Africa proving that black folks were part and parcel of the rest of humanity who evolved certain plants and crops. Most people don't know that watermelons were first cultivated in West Africa. Cotton was first cultivated in West Africa. Peanuts, cola nuts, what have you. You know, in other words, I'm just saying, in my organization, you couldn't come in with a bunch of mythical crap. I taught dialectics, not dialectic materialism, dialectics, how to think as opposed to what to say. You know, quantitative increase, quantitative decrease cause the qualitative people to change. One dialectic principle has great three-dimensional character to it. And for me, you know, I was always good in math. I got A's in math. You know, I got A's in architecture design and all this kind of stuff, engineering design. I got C's in English. Language arts is not my best subject. But I could communicate, I could rap, I could talk. When I researched and found that there were surviving Africans in black language, what? No, I'm reading Marvel did Hershkovich's work, Myth of the Negro Past. Marvel J. Hershkovich is the author of that. Great, profound dissertation anyway. that he destroys all the mythical misrepresentations about black people in America throughout history, through slavery and on up. And he ran across and made reference to an African American named Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner. Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner was a PhD in English. Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner in the 30s went off and did a field research, a 10, 11, 12-year field research. And he went with these old cylinder type recordings. You know, the Senegal, where some African ethnics were, and other places, and Ghana, etc., all the way down to Angola and so on. And he came back across America, went to the Caribbean, you know, in South America and other places where Africans are highly descended from, etc., and so on. And what he proved is that there were no T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds in the West African language where we had been extracted from throughout Africa. There were no T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds. And I used to drop every T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds, except when I was digesting my high-tech information. But other than that, just that video moment call, I dropped the T-H-E-R sound. A lot of the old people did. It doesn't mean we're not being inferior or nothing. It's just that Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner said we were denied access to formal education in the environment of these early days of the country. Forced to speak a language that we did not know. So, if you come and you're a young adult, even 12 years old, and you speak your language, your African ethnic language, boom, and then you're separated from other people in the same African language, you're forced to speak this English language, then when you got some T-H-E-R-A-R sounds, you're going to tend to drop it. Right. He was very right. Because instead of saying this with the TH sound, we tend to say dis. Instead of saying that with the TH sound, we said that. E-R-A-R-O-R, instead of saying your, we said yo. Instead of saying more, we said mo. Jimmy, boy, get in this house. They used to holler out the window. We were kids, you know what I mean? Boy, get your butt in this house. Shut that door. And clean your piss off that floor. Now, when I'm doing this research in life, wow, that's right. She dropped every T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sound. Uh-oh. Somebody's calling me. I mean, sure. Right in the middle of speaking day. Oh, they must have noticed. Who is that? Anyway, I'm sorry. The T-H-E-R-A-R rolling R sounds. So one day I'm in a classroom, anthropology class, and I'm tired, I'm trying to explain to the instructor that you keep using this term Negroid. And then when you get to the Asian people, you say Mongoloid. And then when you get to white folks, it's Caucasian. And I'm saying we need some correct social science reference to black folks, blah, 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 blah. You said, Mr. Seale, if you have an anthropological term that you think we could use, do that. And blah, 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 so I'm arguing. You know, I'm in the classroom, and when I come back and come to the right middle of the class, I start arguing again. And one sister said, Bobby Seale, you keep interrupting this class. I ain't got nothing to do with no African. I said, sister, you just dropped every T. Just the way you said what she said. But my point was this here. I got Huey, Richard Ioki, and Bertram Morrell. Bertram Morrell was a very good friend of mine who helped me organize on the campus of American College, to come to the classroom with me. And finally, Huey jumps up in one of the classrooms. He suggested an instructor, I would like to suggest Africanoid as opposed to Negroid for correct social science reference to black folks. And I jumped up in my seat, I'm up at the front. I said, that's it. And he would sit down. The instructor said, sit down, Mrs. Seale. I sit down. And she says, no, so she writes the term on the board, Africanoid. She says, okay, Mr. Seale, I accept this. I says, okay. I said, right, she underlined this, so it was Africanoid as opposed to Negroid. Another brother in the class, oh, man, the word Negroid is derived from the Spanish term Negro, and it only means black. And it's from Spain, brother. I said, brother, we ain't from Spain, man. I just so anyway, I asked the instructor, I said, we have to equalize the terminology. She said, I accept this. See, I said, no. We have to equalize this terminology and reference to black folks and others and put this together so that, and she says, what are you talking about now? I said, look, okay, no more Negro, but African no. I said, but notice something. For American Indians, Asian people, we're saying Mongoloid. For black folks, we're saying African. When we get to white folks, it's Caucasian. She said, what are you trying to say? I said, equalize the terminology. From now, Africanoid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid, so we have some equalization. Those are my early days of our in debate, development, my consciousness, you know. But let me say this here, and try to summarize this here, because we've got to get to the kind of part of this. Look, I'm going to make this film because this film is going to be a top-flight drama. It's not a documentary on the rise and decline of the Black Panther Party. There's a couple of other films I want to make after that called Vanguard Women. It's the sisters in the struggle in this country who are at the forefront. Most people don't even know that 2/3 of the membership of the Black Panther Party by the end of 1968 was sisters, black African-American women who did that hard work. And Kathleen Cleveland was on the Central Committee in the early days of the party. You know, and the other sister who was on that Central Committee in Chicago, Illinois chapter, you know, right now she's a lawyer for the DC government. And I'm just saying, I got brothers and sisters, former Black Panther Party, with PhDs and master's degrees all over the place, running programs, running government programs. Two of the top politicians in this country, in the United States representatives, are former Black Panther Party member people. Bobby Rush out of the Illinois State chapter of the Black Panther Party, and none other than Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Most people don't know that she worked for the Black Panther Party 5 years in her early days when she was a mother, a single mother with 2 kids going to Mills College. I'm just saying, these are black people who I'm very, very proud of. And they're represented along with a lot of others. So the Black Caucus, but more importantly, the Progressive Caucus and the Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives. Some 90 people. They vote for very progressive issues and problems, and then that's their emphasis. And they got some black Republican guy jumping up, they're all communists. You know, for the same old boogeyman, blah, 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 scare crap. You know, and I try to tell them, I can't stand state control, command, and communist socialism. I can't stand Stalinistic state control, command, and communist socialism. The very idea of it. So the concept of the greater community control, constitutional democratic community control, politically, economically, and social justice-wise, how do we evolve that in the context of understanding that we need a present and future world of people's cooperation and humanism. So our electoral community unity is extremely important. Consciousness raising and grabbing electoral community unity for the people. Power of the people. Thank you very much.
Let's give Bobby Seale another round of applause. Now we're going to move on to our panel discussion part. I'll be introducing our moderator, Dr. Thomas Conway. In July 2008, Dr. Thomas Conway joined Fayetteville State University community as Vice Chancellor and Chief of Staff. He is in charge of ensuring that the vision of Chancellor James Anderson is effectively implemented. Prior to his appointment at FSU, Dr. Conway served as the Dean of Undergraduate Academic Programs at North Carolina State University. He earned his BS degree in Agricultural Education and MS degree in Guidance and Counseling from North Carolina A&T State University, and a PhD in Counseling of Education in North Carolina State University. Dr. Conway, wife of 29 years, is former Michelle Jenkins of Hollywood, Florida. They have 2 children. Dr. Thomas Conway.